Thanks very much. Can you hear me? Yeah. That's the fastest tour of Britain I think I've ever seen, and I have to say much faster than the trains. But that's another story completely. Look, as Vice Chair, I chair the campaigns group, which is trying to facilitate and coordinate the local CND branches and campaigns across England and Wales, at least, as you've heard. Scotland, quite rightly, is somewhere else. But the issue of that really is, how do we get more people into CND? How do we get more active? And how do we actually build the opposition to the nuclear weapons and the nuclear weaponry? And so everything I want to say this afternoon is simply, we need, as CND, to be involved in whatever is moving around us, whatever other campaigns are happening. And, you know, of course, there's Palestine, and there's the climate, as we've heard this morning. And really also that we must not neglect the trade unions. And I have to say that's a Plymouth lesson, as well as a national one. So, thank you. So that's the sort of context. In other words, tactically, we've got to be part of a wider movement and make sure we take CND and anti-nuclear into all the other campaigns. Strategically, well, yeah, just next slide. Okay, next slide. Strategically, we want to shut Britain's nuclear bases. So one follows the other. If we get a critical mass of campaigning across the movement, we actually expose the nuclear bases, we expose the horror of nuclear weapons, and most importantly, we expose the cost of nuclear weapons. And that's really my slogan. And that's really my slogan, and it's CND's slogan, which is welfare, not warfare. And with budget demonstrations coming up next Tuesday and Wednesday, it's a golden opportunity for us to put the costs of nuclear forward, not simply the financial costs, but of course the community costs as well. But I thought this was quite an interest. I just found two maps. They're on CND's education web pages. But the reality is, here's the nuclear subs. I've highlighted them because that's what I know most about, but you know, Lakenheath and Marham are absolutely crucial to us in terms of that extension of what was traditionally a naval nuclear armed force in Britain, and now is naval and air. And I can't understate just how huge that is. The shift, you know, the submarines are still there, but now Britain is going to be a base for launching air-shot nuclear missiles and bombs. Yeah. This side is just what's the sort of fallout? Because if you've got some of that, then you're a target for some of that. That makes sense, doesn't it? And there's the obliteration of Britain, just as a sort of reminder, really. Of course, you can debate on that. So what we've got Faslane and Culdrose up at the top. We've got Barrow in Furness, Derby in the middle, and Plymouth down the bottom. The naval engineers and military in Faslane mess about with the submarines to a point where they break down, and then they come down to Plymouth Devonport to be mended, is the simplest way of putting this, really. So Culdrose has the bombs, and we officially don't, but because the Vanguard class is now in such a condition that they, you know, it's touch and go as to whether they actually keep the statutory one at sea at any one time, because they break down now. They're past their sell-by date, and you know, they come in and come out, and they cost millions, billions, actually. I'll come on to that. The Barrow in Furness of course, is growing the new dreadnought submarines. I think officially at £1.2 billion each one at the moment, but they haven't produced one yet, and the date is going backwards and backwards and backwards towards the mid-30s, because they've got... I always learnt with Airfix kits and Lego that you don't start building it till you've got a plan, as to what it's going to look like at the end. But with tax billions, they've just started building the next generation of submarines without a plan. And so now they've got huge problems with the reactors. They can't really work out how to fit things in. And they're eating themselves alive on, oh, can't we have that technology and that technology, to a point where it's just not going to work. Anyway, you can't make it up, really, except it's the truth. So, next one, yeah. So, what I wanted to skip through is just what it's like in those places. And I live in the centre of Plymouth. But as Sarah said, we went up to Barrow-in-Furness earlier this year, and it's poverty. Because there's a technicality to building something nuclear, and that is that you need technicians, and you need very, very highly qualified specialists. And so most of the people who actually work on the machines, on the designs and the building, are very well paid. So they don't live anywhere near where these sites are, because the sites, I mean, that is the BAE Systems in the middle of Barrow, and it's in the middle of Barrow-in-Furness, and it dominates the entire city, especially when it's floodlit at night. And the whole town around it is very, very impoverished. The deeper red, the poorer people are. Multiple deprivation. So this, all the time, we get told that it's about jobs, and we get told that it's about money into the local community. But it's not. The money's going taken out of the local community. Next one, if you would. And that is the case in all those centres. Talk to people in Derby. Talk to people, actually, I mean, it's interesting around Lake and Heath. There's slightly different demography, but at the same time, there's some very wealthy people who aren't around there, and there's people who need a job and do the grunt work, really. So the next one is Plymouth, which, as I say, I know more about. There it is. It's 4 miles of military hardware. I don't know if you can see there, but I just want to rub this in. Those are nuclear submarines that are past their sell-by date, and they're rotting at anchor there. And if you've got the budget in your head, then it's ever since 2010, this costs £30 million a year to just keep those rotting hulks with nuclear cores inside them safe enough, as they say, for the people of Plymouth. Just here is a main road, and just there is one of the large primary schools in Plymouth, and it's 400 feet from a wall behind which low and medium level nuclear waste is stored in tanks. And so the school has a fire alarm system, but also a nuclear alarm system for if there's a leak. And there's been 10 significant leaks from that in the last 10 years. 20 years, sorry, 10 in 20 years, yeah? Reported, by the way. So you can see the issues here. There's about 5,500 employees altogether, but the majority of those are, in a trade unionist terms, grunts. And you know, there's quite a lot of minimum wage, but there's quite a lot of average wage there as well. If you take it compared with other places, so we have the regional hospital just up the road, and that's double the staffing, for example, but it's in total crisis. Not least that we're losing migrant workers who are feeling threatened in Britain and going away from their nursing jobs. But it's in total crisis. Then we've got schools, etc. You understand that. This has now, it's just had £1 billion spent to refit there, and now it's got another £4 billion coming in for the Dreadnought, to prepare for the Dreadnought servicing system. The rest of the city, that's the next one if you don't mind, is in significant deprivation. I mean, the ward I live in the centre of Plymouth, and the wind for most of the the wind for most of the year comes straight off the dockyard, straight down my back garden. But I'm in the second poorest ward, but Devonport, 1 in 3 children are living in poverty, right all the way around that dockyard that you see. And the Babcock profit, you see, it's just, I sometimes find myself so naive, but actually the military, the MOD, nuclear weapon facility is privately owned. It's Babcock. It's not like BAE. It's not, this isn't a state business. It's outsourced to a private company that makes profit out of it. And Babcock is going to, out of that 4 billion, is going to make about $1 billion in profit. That's the sort of rate, yeah, which is about 3 times the average rate of a business, expected business profit. It's just, you know, I just think they're gangsters and it's a con, really. Why I wanted to raise Babcock is because Babcock dominates Plymouth just in the way that BAE dominates Barrow, or Rolls-Royce dominates, I'll have the next one please, or Rolls-Royce dominates Derby, yeah? And therefore, this is why we have to talk about trade unions. Because if they dominate, then we've got to have a counter propaganda and a counter imagination and image. I mean, this is, Plymouth Argyle might mean something to you. To me, it doesn't really to you. But there's Babcock right the way across the football pitch. There's Babcock in our hospital. There's Babcock in our university. Massive funding domination of our university. All these things have to be thought about. Babcock goes into our schools, yeah, and funds some little granty things whilst pushing Babcock in our schools, in our secondary schools. Our primary schools now are targeted for the military to go in as part of Starmer's new assault, really, ideological assault. And what we're getting now is they're moving. Oh, I just wanted to say that. That's called a glider. It's actually an unstaffed electric submarine, like a drone, that is now being built. The German company has been brought in under this 4 billion into Plymouth as part of a free port where it can import and export its parts without any taxation whatsoever, to build these gliders for the MOD, which are then going to tour around the Isles of Britain. And very, very usefully, just before it was launched this week, they found that there was a Russian spy ship just in international waters, which became front page news, because then the next day, oh look, it's all right, we're spending loads of money on these electric submarines. Electric submarines, they're green. This is part of our whole zero economy, wonderful new green impetus for Plymouth. I know I've got to shut up. I have one more try. So we have been campaigning arm in arm with the climate campaigns in Plymouth for a long time to say what that 4 miles of nuclear dockyard could be transferred into, because we're the windiest and wettest city. I challenge you anywhere else to actually be able to get anywhere near our potential wind and wave power. And we've got 3/4 of the trade union movement. Plymouth Trade Union Council has become, over decades, a centre for anti-nuclear work. We've got NEU, PCS, Unison, FBU, RMT, NASUWT, people won't like that in the NEU, Bakers Union, and we're trying to get into the Students' Union, trying to get into the students to combat Babcock. I hope that's sort of an overview, but that's what we're doing.